Okay, so I started recording, and thank you guys for being here, and thank you, Chris, for being here. And Chris, you would like to tell us a bit how you work in your role as Scrum Master within the SUSE QE Tools team, right?
Yeah, so there's a few ways I do that. Some supported by tooling, some I suppose supported by just interacting with people. Um, so maybe to start with, just a couple sentences on what that means for me. So for me, the mission, if you will, is to see that the team works well, to see that the team is productive in a sense, but perhaps even more importantly, that the team is also, individual people are happy to do what they're doing, because that usually means they want to also finish tickets and solve problems and help each other out. That's the best outcome for me. And usually that is also then in the interest of the product owner, who wants to see that the tickets on the backlog are resolved. So yeah, maybe looking a little bit at the yeah, to visualize a bit, I'll try and
Mm-hmm.
share. Let's see if this is the right page. See more people joining. Um, so as an example, um, not going to go into too much detail on individual tickets, but as an example, say you have the backlog here. You can see there's a
Could you
bunch of
could you
tickets.
zoom in a little bit? It's readable, but
Yes,
I think easier for some. Cool, that's good.
it's better.
Right. So this is the complete backlog of SUSE QE Tools that you're starting with, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's back. Mm-hmm.
So, for example, you can see that um, we have workable tickets here, which is to say those are tickets that we consider to be well enough defined by everyone in the team, ideally. We have in progress ticket, meaning this is stuff that people are working on, which ideally should be at the most 10 tickets if a lot of stuff is going on. That is the number we define in the team to be a sensible amount, until most likely it gets too much. Then we have block tickets that depend on various other things, such as somebody else or another ticket being worked on. And of course, feedback tickets that are things that are waiting on something to be confirmed, most generally. Yeah, so what is interesting about these probably is as already mentioned, in progress is something that shows what is going on in the team. So this is a daily thing for me, is to see what is being worked on, and progress is usually the first indicator of that. So if I see, for example, oh, there's 2 tickets and Ollie is working on that, I know what Ollie's up to, and that is good.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting exception that already yesterday evening I saw that there are 2 tickets in progress, both are assigned to me, and currently nobody else is working, right?
Yeah, so we will take that as an example, though it looks somewhat perhaps unusual. So yeah, maybe I should mention more. Typically, you would expect to see a bunch more names on there, because obviously the question I'm deriving from this is, how come Ollie is doing all the work, in this in this instance. Of course, something I do take into account is I know that people are on vacation, for example. People are on school, for instance, in some cases, since we have a trainee on the team. So it is expected that you don't see everyone there. And of course, if, say, yesterday tickets were being resolved, then you won't see them in progress right now. So then, for example, I could have a look at feedback tickets where you see that there's a bunch more tickets with names on them which are related to stuff that was recently worked on but is waiting on certain things. So actually, one really nice case is one where somebody grabs a ticket and investigates it and finds out, oh, I have a really good potential fix, and then I propose something and mark it as feedback and see how that turns out. And an example, without going into the details, but example might be the ticket here about deadlocks, um, which is, yeah, something where you see, okay, maybe we'll just verify this hypothesis by seeing how it turns out in production. So that's why tickets may not actually be in progress for a long time. There's a couple of other reasons why you may not see people here immediately, which is also because they may be helping out each other and, for instance, doing reviews. So maybe let's just switch over and see if that turns out to be a good example. So there's, yeah, actually, we are mostly ahead of the queue at the moment, which is nice. So you can see there's some draft pull requests, but most of the ones that are ready for review actually have been reviewed. And I think this one is needing just one more person to review. That is also fine. So this is, yeah, why am I looking at reviews here that are not covered in progress? Of course, because this is where the code ultimately is proposed. And part of good teamwork is that we look at each other's work and make suggestions or see um, if it's good enough to merge, for instance. Let's see. Um,
Yeah,
you
concerning the not
yes.
many tickets in progress, I think this is a really good sign because we could follow that. Because there are some people absent today or have vacation early next week, I think. People cared
We
to
actually
make
have
sure,
some we actually have some illnesses as well,
and
unfortunately. So
and even
that
in
does
this,
factor into it as well.
exactly, and even in this case, the team or you or the people that were assigned took care that no ticket is like that they took care that every ticket properly reflects the status. So it's really only in progress when it is in progress, right? So we take that seriously and we can see that, meaning that people would say like, okay, I won't be able to finish that before my vacation. I'd rather, put it back into the queue and add a comment in the ticket describing that rather than, still being assigned to the ticket. It says in progress, but actually it's not being worked on, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Maybe actually, if I can find it, another interesting example might be, I think it should be this ticket. So we have an interesting ticket here, which wouldn't currently show up in progress because this is one where we have some test failures that have been seen in CI, and the the ticket has been estimated. I will cover in a little bit what that really means for us. But essentially, we've looked at what the ticket is about. You can see there's some investigation there, but there's also a finding, or there's the assumption is not clear yet what the best fix is. So the ticket has been put back on the backlog, so it's not in progress, and somebody else, for instance, is planning to take a look, which also means that with a difficult ticket, sometimes it doesn't make sense to spend loads of time on it, but it can make sense to have a look and see if you have a solution or pass it on to somebody else. By the way, if anyone has questions, feel free to ask. Maybe I'm going fairly fast, so feel free to add any questions as I explain things.
I have one question.
Mhm.
You said that you're looking into that people are happy with their work, and I agree, because I think we need to work efficient, and we can work efficient if people are motivated, and people um, can be motivated by different means, or on the other side, if we feel like we are frustrated with certain work or we want to avoid certain work, then we won't be able to deliver efficiently, right? So how do you how do we, or how is your take on ensuring um, that we're making sure we are motivated to do the work? It's not just giving out free candy, right?
Um, that would be nice if we had free candy. Yeah, so one, yeah, there's different measures to see people are motivated. So I'd say seeing that we work together is one measure. So as I said, with the example I was just showing, tickets where more than one person tries and has a look at the ticket, for example, I think are helpful, or in general, it is encouraged that people look at another ticket and see if they're able to be supportive, because one thing that can make it very tiresome or tough on things is if you feel like you're on your own. And regardless of what the task is, if it's difficult to solve and you don't have any help, then you will exhaust yourself more easily. There's weekly estimations called that I mentioned briefly. So an estimation. Not sure yeah, we don't have any actual new tickets now, but let's say as an example, I'll just pick a random ticket. Say you have a new ticket there and somebody filed it and put some description in there, some criteria, um, some context for what it is about. And we want to know if we are able to actually solve this ticket. And we especially should mean more than one person. It shouldn't be something that one person looks and thinks, oh yeah, this is obvious to me. And then somebody else picks up the ticket and bangs their head on the table, wondering what the goal is, um, or maybe works on something and it turns out that we wanted something else. So this is something we want to avoid because usually it is more satisfying if you know what goal you're working on. And for example, we see that AC given in a ticket or the context for the ticket are well defined, and that's ideally most of the team at least know what the context is about, know what the project is about, like that's related to GM bots and IBS, for example. Or do we have an idea of what the purpose of release requests is, and failing OPK tests are mentioned here, things like that. So you as a person also understand what you're achieving at the end of the day when you finish this ticket.
Mhm. Do you guys have further questions, midterm, or like to share your experience, Scrum Master? Then I can follow up until you guys find more questions. But what do you do in your daily work? Like after you wake up and get a nice hot beverage, then what are the first tasks that you do as a Scrum Master?
Um, right. So yeah, besides taking a look at what's currently in progress to check what's going on, maybe something I've missed, as in these tickets. There's also some yeah, there's a few other places that give me, say, a good first indication of what's going on. So another matter is chat groups, as in team chat channel, to see if people are already mentioning something. And my usual rule of thumb is that around 10 or 11, I kind of expect people to be yeah, up and working and have whatever coffee or tea and mention stuff that is going on. Generally speaking, I don't particularly mind where I find out whether somebody is really communicating in chat, say what their plans are or what their open questions are, or say you can post a question in progress. Um, you can post a question um, on GitHub, for instance, since this is, or also GitLab in some cases, of course. Those are all the cases where the code is happening. So generally speaking, I'd say these are 3 points where I get an idea of where the activity is happening, and that tells me, okay, somebody is doing things, and that's a good indication. If conversely somebody is not mentioning things anywhere, I might wonder, did something happen? Is somebody really frustrated and doesn't know how to progress? Is this why there's no updates in the ticket, for example? Maybe this person needs some help, some encouragement. And another thing worth mentioning is also we have our dailies in Jitsi in the morning. And this is also usually a good check to see what are we working on. and to briefly mention, usually in a sentence or two, in the best case, and to see, okay, maybe I have a follow-up question on this, and it's not entirely clear what the next steps are. Maybe there's some questions that came up in the ticket from somebody else who was, say, the reporter of a bug, who then says, "Oh, but I still have this problem you fixed. I'm not sure if it helps," and we might be able to discuss on the call, for example, what some possible ideas could be.
Okay. in in agile processes, the most important consider the retrospective. What's your take on it, and how do you ensure effective process?
You're right. So in yeah, in general, we have the retrospective on a bi-weekly basis, and this is also called that everyone is ideally able to attend, and I like to see that even regardless of that, it is possible to mention if something isn't going well. You don't have to wait 2 weeks if you are unhappy for some reason. But I would probably say the retro is usually the opportunity to bring up some, yeah, maybe bigger question, or maybe some new ideas, because of course we make some time to discuss things there. Um, I'm thinking if I can. Haven't prepared a dummy board, unfortunately. So maybe I should just describe it briefly. So the format we go to is the typical format where you have three types of points that you bring up, and everyone is strongly encouraged to at least mention something, whatever that is. So the first category is something that went well in the past couple of weeks. Um, the second one is something that we could do better. And the third one is generally ideas, something we could try out, something we could explore uh, in the future. And you might start out really simply by, oh, the weather was nice. Or maybe more recently, you'd say, oh, the sky is gray all the time. It's not nice. It makes it difficult to be cheerful when working on a ticket. Um,
There, I think you can shortly share word that we have, which affected confidential thing going on the.
okay, let me try that. Can you? Yeah, you can
Yep.
see it. Yeah. So actually, let's grab these three examples. That's not too bad. So for the first section, alert handling by multiple team members, for instance, this alert handling, generally speaking, is we have Grafana, for instance, set up. We have Git pipelines that cause emails to be sent if something couldn't successfully be or shortly. And this is something we share as a team task. So we have a dedicated role of alert handling, but also in general, like with other tasks, we encourage people to help each other out. So the person on alert handling isn't on their own trying to figure everything out, but others can and will usually also look at alerts of something nice that happened in the week, which is called Mer here. That's the things that could be better. Not many OpenGA tickets in the backlog. Maybe that's just an example of yeah. If you look at the backlog I was showing earlier, the types of tickets are not diverse enough, and maybe this is something that affects your moods. Yeah, as to the question you asked earlier, Ollie, it could be that someone is not super happy because different types of tickets couldn't be found in the backlog, and then this is something, of course, we can revisit and say, hey, dear PO, maybe you can see that the types of tickets are a bit more mixed up that we are able to work on. And yeah, ideas. Actually, we have an interesting idea currently that's already been proposed ahead of the bridge row, which is to see if we want to split out some of the workflows related to infra stuff. And that covers, for example, having a dedicated slot for the daily that is specifically about infra related tasks, as opposed to everything else, including working on OpenQA tickets, looking into test failures and such. And we we are likely going to try this out as an experiment. So this is something also that I think helps the team, or in the sense helps make sure that we actually know that we are finding a good workflow is to test out what works for us as a team. And that we see, for instance, we change our meetings a little bit to see if it makes everyone more happy, or maybe we find out it doesn't work and we can revisit in a future retrospective.
Right. A common best practice is whenever we identify such ideas or issues that we would like to address, we also create tickets and put them into our backlog. Because we only have one backlog, and if you don't put something into the backlog, then it will be forgotten. And then, in the worst case, just in the next retrospective, we will come back and say like, oh yeah, right, we talked about that idea, but then, nobody did anything because during your normal work week, you're being guided by the tickets which are present in the backlog. So this is why we put them in the backlog and then work on them accordingly.
Yeah, and maybe one thing that's worth mentioning, because we've had conversations related to this in the past as well, is we are happy to put things like that relates to the process of the team in the backlog as well. So this is not necessarily something that has to be decided in secret between one or two persons, or just on a call somewhere that suddenly happens. But ideally, we try and communicate this properly. And especially if it concerns something like changing how we conduct our meetings. And that also concerns current meetings that we have. We have discussed them in the past. And for example, the mentioned estimations call, we've discussed how we want to do it, and try to find as a team the best setup. And just like you can have for features in OpenQA, you can have a ticket that says this might be improvement for how we work as a team, common workflows, and so we can discuss this and try and resolve that ticket in that spirit. Questions from others? So if you have questions, feel free to ask. Feel free to chime in. Or if there's a particular area you're interested in. I think I've given a good general overview. I could, for example, get more into Redmine related things that I look at, for example.
Yeah, then maybe I can juggle around some more questions with you. For example,
Sure.
how do we ensure that we are not overlooking Dale? How we are not overlooking like something that is not to prevent Dale work?
Yeah, I like that you're asking this because this is something I had in mind, and
Mhm.
I was wondering if somebody had this question because it's quite crucial. So I will switch. Let's see. I will try and switch to the back to Redmine. Yes. So we have some help in the form of saved queries in Redmine that can give you again an indication of it. And one measure we have, of course, is the due date. And this is something that actually a bot sets automatically on tickets as people start working on them based on our mean cycle time. Meaning in a sentence, there's a certain amount of time that usually should suffice to work on a ticket, to propose something to solve it, and to eventually make sure that it works and it satisfies the op or that it's deployed successfully and so on. And what you see here is based on that, well, it's called the forecast. Basically, it means those are the tickets that will next run out. Meaning, those are the ones I might look at first to see if there's still some open questions or to double check is this being finished. And there's one example that is due today. So I might have a look at this ticket and remind myself briefly what the ticket was about, if I can't remember the details. And see, for example, do we have current comments? Does it look like this is about to be solved today, which is what we're aiming for? You can see a question, maybe we can resolve it, or a hypothesis, if you will. And so I have two options here. I can check if this is obvious enough to me, and like anyone on the team, I can take a look and see, okay, maybe I think this is obvious, and I'll add a comment with my reasoning and say, this is all good, we'll resolve it, we're fine. Or maybe I would rely on support from the team in that sense, because I'm not all knowing. I try and maintain an overview of what's going on in the backlog, but I can't know all of the tickets either. So I might post a question in chat, for example, and say, can somebody double check if this can be resolved, or if there's anything we're overlooking? Maybe there's some check that that should still be done, rollback steps, which we have in some places.
Okay,
And yeah,
you said that you would then help to resolve the ticket. Does that mean that only you may resolve the ticket because you're the boss?
um, no, absolutely not.
Good.
Um, no, this is this is why um yeah, actually in most cases I might simply um phrase it as a question, and sometimes fairly naive questions, either in progress or in chat somewhere, where I basically say, you know, can somebody check it? And actually, when I ask that, that means I do leave it up to people. Actually, I try and avoid changing the ticket state if I can help it, unless it's super obvious. So, for example, if I see that the ticket is in feedback, like in this case, and maybe can be resolved, the best case is always that the person who's working on it knows that it's all um, that it's all going well and can be resolved, or respectively that the person working on it asks somebody else to double check if the ticket can be resolved. That is also a really good case. So yeah, actually, more often than not, I'm not the person resolving the tickets.
Okay.
But yeah, if you will, I'm the person sometimes asking the annoying questions of, please double check. Would be nice to close the ticket.
Yeah. Um, I would understand it like this, that it might feel annoying because I'm annoyed by myself. Then when I'm receiving the question, then, being the ticket assignee, I could ask myself like, yeah, I should have done that.
I mean, sometimes I can get why um why something, yeah, isn't being done yet, as in maybe there's something else that's grabbing your attention. Maybe while working on one particular ticket, you're also checking alerts that are ongoing, for example, looking at people reporting issues in various chat channels, which is also very important. So of course there's very good reasons to also wait and not resolve things too adamantly. And this is sometimes why tickets are left in feedback a bit longer, because maybe we want to make sure that the fix actually works. So it's not generally a bad sign if something is sitting there till the last day. Of course, this is when something should be resolved, and I would also look at the next tickets ahead of time, for example, and see we have another ticket that runs out on the 13th, so that's a few more days. But I might still have a look and see, okay, are we approaching the fix here? Is this looking like it's going to be resolved? Because if it turns out there's some big questions that come up on the very last day, then it's going to take more time.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
the best
Mm.
the best thing is actually to resolve those ahead of time.
Right. Um, those reactions can also differ. The expectations on reaction could differ based on priority, right? So this is why we came up with service level objectives for ourselves. Would you like to share the backlog status view, explain how you take a look on it, how it helps your work?
Actually, I haven't shown it yet. You're right.
Oh, you have it
So
prepared.
this
Okay,
is
cool.
yes. I just realized I had this in my mind, but I hadn't shown this one yet. So this is the backlog status, which is actually based on queries in progress as well. Except these are automated numbers, so you can see there's the overall backlog, and it has 88 out of 100 tickets in it at the moment. There's the workable backlog. You might remember it actually had 17 tickets in there, so the number agrees with that. You can see that there's no tickets exceeding the due date at the moment. And you can see, so this is, if you will, the strict version of the one I was showing earlier. This is not just the anticipation, but this is, if something shows up here, it means, well, something we missed, right? And this is something that would have to be immediately checked, and it tells me, okay, there's something I missed and didn't realize we um, didn't manage to get to that
Right.
in time.
What's your experience? I think there's a green heart now in every row. How common is it to have it like that?
How common is it? Um, this is, of course, the best case.
And I would say
Um,
it's the common case from my experience. Often we manage to keep it like that. Sometimes it happens that we have one red showing up here. One of those cases, as mentioned, like exceeding due date,
mhm.
which is not a catastrophe, but means that it's a priority for us to look into on that day.
Yeah, so something that can happen is that, as an example, I noticed that there's something that's due the next day, and I ask for feedback on that, ask to clarify on that, and other work is coming up, and it happens that the question isn't being answered on that day. So then the following day, when the due date is actually exceeded, it turns out, yeah, we really need to see. It might be the basic case where there's just several things going on, and maybe you actually have more than one high priority tickets you're working on. Sometimes it is understandable that you focus on things as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, what you can actually see here, which I think is also good to see, the SLOs are mentioned here. So these are service level objectives. These would turn red if, for example, an urgent ticket is not being picked up within a week, or a high ticket is not being picked up within a month. So this is the measure that would tell us we are not responsive enough in that sense.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and the last points, I'll mention them for completeness. I explained them earlier. So in progress tickets, we actually defined as a total. We don't want to work on more than 10 tickets within the team, because if we actually have more tickets in progress, most likely it means there's too much going on, and instead we should help each other work on and complete existing tickets, because there's only so much the same amount of people can do. We don't have unlimited capacity, and we don't have unlimited energy to work on something. And same for feedback. There's a maximum that we should have, because at some point it just becomes difficult to keep track of everything.
One more question
Questions
I
from
have,
the audience?
or
Sure,
from,
go ahead.
yeah, first from others. Right now, okay. One question I have is collaboration with other teams or exchange of knowledge, sharpen your saw. How do you do that?
Collaboration with other teams. Let me think if there's a good example that we have.
I mean, as a Scrum Master, okay. So we have tickets where we collaborate with other teams, but I mean, like you exchange with the Scrum Masters of other teams.
Yes, that I do as well, and that's actually also quite important to me. Is there is regular calls with yeah, generally Scrum Masters of other teams or squads, as they are also called in some contexts, to see, for instance, how do others compared to the tools team, for instance, how do other teams work on their tickets? How do we um, how do we see each other in terms of being able to work together? So I invite, for instance, also people to say, this is something where we could help each other out more as a team when a particular team struggles, for example, when there's certain types of issues, or maybe if it seems like, say, as an example, maybe it seems like as a team we're too busy to look at feature requests, and it affects other teams. This is feedback that can be very valuable, because maybe it means we are overloaded as a team, or maybe it means there's a communication aspect that we can look at into the team itself. Because part of the work is also, for example, communicating um, changes that we come up with as part of feature development, and to show, this is what we've done and this is how it affects others. Things like, we've just implemented this, and in some cases I might remind people that it's good to announce things in mailing lists, chat channels, and such things, or add documentation about things that might be overlooked in some cases.
Mm-hmm. And anything you can give out as a recommendation to other Scrum Masters how to, learn on the job, something to read, something to watch, to do.
So my biggest recommendation in terms of learning on the job is actually to to see as much as possible what's actually going on in the team, and that could be that you notice something that is raising questions that you might have, and simply ask what's going on there, try and clarify, or maybe figure out, do I make sense of how things are going? Like, do I feel, for example, that that the question I ask are useful? Maybe people don't tell me this, and for example, this is all something I can do myself as part of the retrospective. I can also bring up questions, which is so for me, the first measure is actually what I'm working with on a daily basis, and also why I encourage everyone to tell me, if you feel I'm doing something that doesn't make sense to you as a part of the team, I'm happy to know. I'm happy to learn from that first and foremost.
Yeah. Then I have one last question. Is it fun for you being a Scrum Master?
Yes, absolutely.
Why?
I mean, I will say sometimes, of course, things things could be better. Like you always have questions that come up that could be uncomfortable questions and such. And you might hear it in the background. I think my cat is also voicing opinions here. But I'm I'm quite happy to see when things go well in the team. When, for example, when multiple people hop onto a ticket and try and solve it, even if it looks extremely difficult, and you're starting to wonder if we can even find a solution. And this is
Right,
this is something I find amazing. And if I can somehow encourage this, that's one of the best things I could imagine.
right. Okay, cool. Anything last minute you'd like to add? No? Okay.
Yeah, if there's no more questions, I'd say everyone also feel free to poke me outside of the call and ask me. Happy to have a chat.
Yep. Cool. Thanks, Chris. Um, I wanted to start a series where we cover the individual roles in the SUSE QE Tools team. We will have two more, which is, as in a usual Scrum team, you have product owner and you have the developers. I would like to give both of them their voice as well, me and be filled by somebody from the development team. But first, in the next week, what we will cover is OpenQA test issue management. That's more generic than concerning SUSE QE Tools team, but mostly how OpenQA test issues are handled in Progress OpenSUSE org. How to file new tickets properly, assign to the appropriate teams, the setup that we have within the SUSE QE teams, how to triage issues or how the issues are triaged. So that's also very suitable for newcomers. Until then, see you and bye.